Q4708. Wake turbulence is near maximum behind a jet transport just after takeoff because A. The engines are at maximum thrust output at slow airspeed. B. The gear and flap configuration increases the turbulence to maximum. C. Of the high angle of attack and high gross weight. The correct answer is C. After takeoff, a jet transport aircraft typically maintains a high angle of attack to climb rapidly. This high angle of attack, combined with the aircraft's heavy gross weight, creates significant lift and generates strong vortices at the aircraft's wingtips. These vortices form the wake turbulence that trails behind the aircraft. The high angle of attack and high gross weight contribute to the intensity of the wake turbulence during the initial climb phase. It is important for other aircraft to maintain proper separation to avoid encountering these hazardous wake vortices. After takeoff, a jet transport aircraft typically maintains a high angle of attack to climb rapidly. This high angle of attack, combined with the aircraft's heavy gross weight, creates significant lift and generates strong vortices at the aircraft's wingtips. These vortices form the wake turbulence that trails behind the aircraft. The high angle of attack and high gross weight contribute to the intensity of the wake turbulence during the initial climb phase. It is important for other aircraft to maintain proper separation to avoid encountering these hazardous wake vortices. 4709. What effect would a light crosswind of approximately 7 knots have on vortex behavior? A. The light crosswind would rapidly dissipate vortex strength. B. The upwind vortex would tend to remain over the runway. C. The downwind vortex would tend to remain over the runway. The correct answer is B. In the presence of a light crosswind, the upwind vortex, which is generated on the side opposite to the direction of the crosswind, tends to be pushed back towards the runway. This happens because the crosswind exerts a force on the vortex, causing it to drift back towards the runway and reducing its lateral movement away from the runway. On the other hand, the downwind vortex, generated on the side facing the crosswind, would tend to move away from the runway due to the influence of the crosswind. However, the effect of a light crosswind on vortex behavior is relatively small compared to stronger crosswinds, and the vortices can still pose a potential hazard to following aircraft. Proper caution and adherence to separation guidelines are necessary to avoid encountering wake turbulence. 4710. When landing behind a large jet aircraft, at which point on the runway should you plan to land? A. If any crosswind, land on the windward side of the runway and prior to the jet's touchdown point. B. At least 1,000 feet beyond the jet's touchdown point. C. Beyond the jet's touchdown point. The correct answer is C. When landing behind a large jet aircraft, it is generally advised to touch down beyond the point where the preceding jet aircraft touched down. This helps to ensure an adequate separation from the wake turbulence generated by the jet. The wake turbulence tends to descend and move outward from the aircraft's flight path, so landing beyond the touchdown point reduces the risk of encountering the residual wake turbulence. However, it's important to note that the exact separation distance may vary depending on factors such as the size and weight of the preceding aircraft, wind conditions, and ATC instructions. Pilots should always exercise caution and follow ATC instructions to maintain a safe separation from wake turbulence. 4738. Under which conditions is hydroplaning most likely to occur? A. When rudder is used for directional control instead of allowing the nose wheel to contact the surface early in the landing roll on a wet runway. B. During conditions of standing water, slush, high speed, and smooth runway texture. C. During a landing on any wet runway when brake application is delayed until a wedge of water begins to build ahead of the tires. The correct answer is B. Hydroplaning is the loss of traction between the tires of an aircraft and the runway surface due to a layer of water or slush. It can occur when the tires encounter a thin film of water or slush on the runway, preventing them from making direct contact with the runway surface. Hydroplaning is more likely to occur at higher speeds, in the presence of standing water or slush on the runway, and when the runway surface is smooth. This reduces the ability of the tires to effectively displace the water and maintain grip. Therefore, pilots should exercise caution and be prepared for the potential of hydroplaning in these conditions. 4076. You may cancel an IF or flight plan. A. At any time as long as you advise ATC. B. Only in an emergency. C. If in VMC outside Class A airspace. The correct answer is C. Pilots are allowed to cancel their IF or instrument flight rules, flight plan when they are operating in visual meteorological conditions, VMC, and outside of Class A airspace. This means that if the pilot has clear visibility and is operating in airspace below 18,000 feet, they have the option to cancel their IF or flight plan with air traffic control, ATC. However, it's important to note that canceling an IF or flight plan does not necessarily mean that the pilot is no longer subject to any applicable ATC clearances or procedures. They must still comply.